All righty, so we are looking at PFT 120 today. This is going to be chapter 3, the psychological considerations here. So, the idea behind this lecture is that we want to understand how important all of the considerations are related to psychology when we're looking at like youth clients, right? We do know that even though we're not necessarily like therapists, we're not counselors, we're coaches, right? But one of the things that what every one of our clients hire us for, it doesn't matter who it is, every session I've ever had, the reason I'm hired is because it's somebody who is seeking an improved quality of life, right? Like that's what they're going for. They are looking to improve the quality of their life through, maybe something external like exercise, or maybe the gratification that comes internally from that exercise. So we are trying to help young people achieve that very early on, because again, it's the same thing that we talked about yesterday, right? I'm not necessarily trying to create the world's most athletic youth. I am trying to create an adult with like healthy habits, right? So we're going to look at these a little bit of a different thing that we didn't talk about in the last psychology class. But we're going to look at what's called the 5 key traits of high achievers. So it's actually sort of these 5 things that we're trying to foster inside any client, but particularly our youth clients. And we'll talk about like how the different like aspects of psychology and understanding and coaching can have really positive influence on, again, quality of life. And then we will also talk a little bit about self-perception today. And then lastly, we want to understand like our clients' like vision. We want to understand our clients' goals. The goals of our youth clients are going to be a little bit different than the goals of like our adults. Did anybody, all 3 of you guys, did you guys see Inside Out, the Pixar movie?
Yes.
I freaking love that movie. Did you like it?
It's all right.
It's all right. Man.
Kids, that's why I watch it.
What's that?
I got kids, that's why I watch it.
Yeah, totally. See, here's the thing. Full adult, I will watch that movie anytime. My favorite part of that whole movie, Julio, Chris, have you guys seen this? Oh, I think Julio might be working, but you fellas with me? Well, anyway, my favorite part of that movie is towards the end when they're just in, like some type of like maintenance workers show up to install like a much more complicated control board. That's my favorite part of that movie. I actually really love that because it kind of shows like our visions, our goals, all that stuff. It's pretty basic when we're younger, right? And then it gets much more complex as we get older. And so it's one of the things that I really, really love looking at. So we want to sort of come up with some strategies to help us understand like where our youth clients are coming from. So one of the big things we want to understand is that the mind and the body are not necessarily separate things. They definitely play into one another. Your mind is going to influence your body is going to influence your mind. If you are living with daily aches and pains, it's going to lead to like psychologic stress, right? And if you have psychologic stress from maybe some other outside source, it can also lead to aches and pains. It can lead to like tight muscles that are getting stuck in you, getting these like altered postures that alters your breathing, which causes headaches. We do know that like if somebody just holds all their tension here all day, that can have really negative impacts on like the back of our head, right? It literally pulls, if you look at your upper trapezius, you can see it actually comes all the way up here. And if you look even further at like the fascia in the skull, right, you'll actually see it's all like one big web. There's kind of a big fascial line that runs all the way from here up to here, just at the very base of the skull. And then if you look at the skull itself, you'll see this like white stuff here. That's all fascia, right? And that's connected to these muscles here. It's, it's getting pulled on by all those. So if you have like undue stress 24 hours a day and you're just constantly like contracting certain muscles, it can cause tension headaches. It can cause feelings of shortness of breath. And that's caused by, psychological trauma. It's caused by stress, So when we're looking at the psychological stuff, we are looking at both psychological and emotional, right? Psychological is sort of how our client sort of thinks about certain things. And then emotional is how they feel about certain things. We're trying to understand both those things. We're definitely going to see like some people are going to be more psychological. They tend to think through things a little bit more. Other people are going to be a little bit more emotional, and they're going to tend to feel through things a little bit more. But either way, both of those can have impacts on the physical aspects of things, right? Physiologic is like how our body is actually functioning. If your muscles are really tight because like psychologically or emotionally you're experiencing a lot of stress and that's altering your posture, well, unfortunately, the physiologic and anatomic implications are, we're dragging a bone from one place to another. So one of the things that's associated with stress is shallow breathing patterns, right? So shallow, this is actually one of the reasons why we're going to see this in, I think we're getting into it on Monday, or maybe it might even be tomorrow actually. But if you look at like, you go to NASM's like assessment form, right? You go down here and you download this lifestyle health history questionnaire. You'll look to see, and one of the questions that they have is their lifestyle. Do they feel like they're getting enough sleep? Are they waking up rested? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how do they rate their average stress level? Or what are they doing currently to manage their stress levels? And so it's a lot of questions about stress. And the reason for that is because we know that when we are stressed out, we'll actually physically experience shallow breathing patterns. And so shallow breathing patterns are like, rather than taking like a full breath in and a full breath out. Now, the problem with shallow breathing patterns is it actually uses different muscles to breathe, right? It actually brings in oxygen the same way that we normally do, except that it's recruiting the wrong muscles to get it done, right? It uses much more of our abdominals, it uses our external obliques, and things like that. And it uses our pectoral muscles and our traps and things like that. These extra muscles that really aren't supposed to be doing most of the work when it comes to breathing, right? And so we definitely know that like that is going to influence our posture because those muscles that are causing, like helping with the breathing, but in this case, they're kind of taking over and doing all the breathing, right? Those muscles are also postural muscles, right? They also have postural implications. And so because of that, that is going to alter our posture. It's going to drag our bones in the wrong way. And again, we just go back to that idea of what we talked about in the very first anatomy class. The kinetic chain gets out, dysfunctional, right? Your skeletal system gets moved around because your muscular system is being controlled by your nervous system the wrong way, right? We're using the wrong muscles to get maybe the right job done, but we're using the wrong muscles, so it affects our posture. So we definitely know that there's some stresses that youths are going to go through, and we are going to see like a connection here, right? Sort of the things that we see a lot of times, some psychological stressors that we see in youths that will have other implications. Girls who don't necessarily feel fit, they don't look a way that they sort of want to look like. Boys who can't run faster than the team, but a lot of times like developing young men are often, not just competitive, but like they get their sort of like entire identity wrapped up around these like, physical concepts. And if they aren't meeting those things, then they feel like they, don't necessarily belong, or they don't feel like they have value, right? And so what we want to do is we want to try to be as empathetic as possible. And we're trying to find a way to help improve that quality of life, like we talked about, right? So when we talk about quality of life, it's comprised of a couple different concepts here, all kind of coming together. We see we want our psychological well-being to be better, right? That's focusing, like teaching our client how to focus on like creating healthy thoughts, helping them understand that like, everybody's different and everybody's going through like different developmental stages. It's not really something they have control over, and they got an entire life ahead of them to kind of work on these things, right? That way, like it's like one of my favorite ways to kind of explain this when I haven't worked with like a ton of like little kids, but I've definitely worked with plenty of teens. And one of the things that I always try to like encourage them to understand is like how amazingly adaptive the human body is. Like the human body is so good at adapting to different like types of stress, right? Like you give us this type of stress, our body learns how to overcome it. You give us that type of stress, our body learns how to overcome it, right? And so that psychological understanding of that sometimes helps, because it's like, if I'm not where I want to be right now, because if I understand very clearly and like concisely that my body can adapt to overcome that through just like a little bit of training and a little bit of effort, not only is that like more meaningful to me because like I get something back from the effort that I put in, I'm also I can play the long game here, right? Like I can take the time to get, better at these things slowly, like over time, right? And so that's sort of like what I encourage in my clients. When it comes to like a psychological well-being, I'm like, look, you may not be where you want to be right now. And not only is that okay, but in a way it's kind of cooler because now you've got something to work towards. And when you get there, it's going to be that much more meaningful, I was talking about, we were listening to some stand-up comedy the other night, and we were talking about like one of the things one of my favorite jokes in Pete Holmes' special. I don't know if you guys ever watched Pete Holmes. He did like some of the, I don't, not College Humor, but I think he did like some of the Funny or Die stuff for a little while. He's like a big podcast guy, but really talented comedian. And in one of his jokes, as he talks about how like, because of smartphones, he's like, we know, what does he say? He's like, we know everything, but we're not a lick smarter for it. And he's like, because the gap between knowing and not knowing is so short nowadays that we don't really take the time to like psychologically appreciate that knowledge. Like it used to be that like, you'd be sitting at home and a random thought would pop into your head and you'd be like, huh, I wonder where Tom Petty is from. Like this is a weird example that he chooses. He's like, I wonder where Tom Petty is from. And so like you would go and ask people, it's like, hey, do you know where Tom Petty's from? It's like, you know what? I don't know. And it's like, no. And you go on, and you ask somebody else, and then like years go by, and then suddenly you run into this like person. You're like, hey, where's Tom Petty from? And this person's wearing like a Heartbreakers t-shirt. And she goes, Florida. And you like this wave of endorphins like washes over you because you're like, oh, Florida. And that's how you met your wife, And I love that joke. I think that joke is really like insightful because, sometimes we don't take the time to appreciate things. And I think that like one of the coolest parts of exercising is that you have this really big thing that you have to overcome, and it can be really difficult to do so. And so you learn how to overcome it, and then you can take the time to psychologically appreciate all of your hard work and your effort that went into, you achieving this goal. So, and that's encouraging our clients to do that, right? That's what we're going for here when it comes to the psychological well-being, right? There's also the emotional well-being. This is another really big one. This is focusing on healthy emotions. Teaching ourselves to sort of teaching our youth clients to sort of learn how to step back and be a little bit less emotional about things. A lot of times we have, you guys remember when we were talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, we talked about rational emotive therapy, right? The idea that like our words sort of influence our emotions. And so just taking a moment to sort of realize, when we have this like immediate sort of emotional response to something, if we just take a second, look at that something a little bit more rationally, or look at it from like a little bit of a fairer viewpoint, maybe it's not that we are terrible. Maybe it's that like I just haven't worked on this skill. maybe I haven't developed this enough yet. That is going to like help us like see those improvements. And so that is one thing that we are also trying to encourage in our youths, right? We're trying to teach them how to sort of focus on those healthy emotions and have a little bit more of a rational approach to things. There's the social well-being, which is focused on healthy relationships. I think this is something that everyone needs to learn how to do. You want to learn how to surround yourself with the type of people that you want in your life, rather than, I'm sure we have people that sometimes are like dragging us away from things, or maybe we haven't communicated with the people in our life effectively enough. And so part of having like a good solid like social well-being is taking the time to sort of purposefully structure the people around us. I'm not sure I mentioned this to you fellas, because I think I brought this up in the evening class because it came up somehow, but it was this weekend. I got to meet in person for the first time my girlfriend's parents, and I asked them for like permission to basically propose. And so sometime within the next 6 months, that's going to happen, which is very exciting for me. And her parents like very willingly were like, yeah, we think that that's great, because they were like, you seem like you have got a social circle that's really helpful, and you are obviously like a good couple and this and that. But like they were like, one of the things that's very clear to us is that you're surrounding yourself with the type of people that are good and constructive and like helpful, and like that is sort of the community that we want. And we would love, aside from just you two being a good couple, like the idea of like the circle of friends that you are surrounding yourself with is also very good. And so that made me feel really good. Like that's the social well-being that we're talking about. And then lastly, we've got the physical well-being, which obviously is focusing on like a healthy physical life, right? Taking the time to get outside, get a little bit of sunlight, be physically active. We do know that like that leads to a much higher quality of life. So these are sort of the things that we're trying to encourage in our youth clients. This is why playing sports and being physically active can be so helpful for youths, right? Not only are we learning how to focus on healthy thoughts by, maybe being part of a team and having a strategy and learning how to execute that strategy, we're developing emotional well-being by focusing on like, there's going to be some highs and lows when it comes to like playing sports against other teams and stuff. It focuses on healthy relationships because everybody is sort of growing together, and it's obviously focusing on physical well-being because, again, we are very adaptive creatures. So even playing sports at a young age can put physical stress on the body that causes the body to need to adapt. So that is sort of the quality of life approach that we are looking at, and one of the reasons why it's so important to get youths engaged in physical activity. Not to mention all the fact that like we're also giving our youth clients a healthy foundation for the future. So when we are looking at this sort of improved quality of life, there's all the stuff that we just talked about, right? There's the sort of 4 aspects of quality there, right? But the other thing that we need to understand, especially if we are looking, primarily we're spending our time kind of talking about the psychological and emotional well-being today. One of the things that we need to look at when we're looking at youths is we need to have an understanding of our self-perception. Okay, so your self-perception, it's exactly as it sort of sounds, right? Your self-perception is how an individual sees themselves, right? So they're going to see themselves in sort of 2 primary aspects, or at least we're trying to break it down into 2 primary aspects here, right? So that's going to be your self-efficacy and your self-esteem, right? So your self-efficacy is the belief that you have the ability to accomplish a specific task. So let's say like you set out to like do something, right? Your self-efficacy would indicate that when you set out to do that thing, do you feel like you are going to succeed? right? Like, do you feel like you have the ability to successfully accomplish the things that you set out to do, right? That's your self-efficacy. So I'll give you a kind of a funny example that made me like, I was just kind of bragging to my girlfriend about, like, I was like, we got this, we got anything we want to do, we can accomplish, because we pull this off, we can pull anything off. So yeah, 2 days ago, wait, no, yeah, 2 days ago, my girlfriend, um, she needed a fridge for her new apartment. And so we found this refrigerator on Craigslist. We go over to Burbank. We're just going to say hi and like maybe like, see the fridge, determine whether or not we want to get it. And then like, maybe put a small deposit down and come back and get it later when I can get like a U-Haul truck or something. And we walk up to this refrigerator and like, nice old man. And all Lindsay had was just like a little bit of money on her. She didn't have like the full amount with her. Like I said, it was just meant to be like an afternoon trip. We took the dog with us because like we really weren't planning on doing much. But I saw this refrigerator and I was like, I can fit that in the back of my car. Like, I can get that refrigerator into my RAV4. And the guy was like, yeah, you think so? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And so I like measured, and sure enough, it had like a 1/2 inch clearance. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. So I like, and my girlfriend was like, are we sure? And I was like, yeah, let's get it done now. We'll have the rest of our day to ourselves. So I roll that thing. Lucky this guy had a hand truck. I rolled over to the car, set it on the bucket, and like lifted it and got it in, like threaded through the back. I had 2 lashing straps on me. I didn't have all my lashing straps because they're being used in the backyard for this project right now. But I like lashed it to my car and we drove, and like, I actually ended up paying the guy because I had cash and she didn't. But we drove from Burbank all the way to her place. And then I borrowed my roommate's crappy little like U-Haul hand truck and hauled that thing up a flight of stairs, got all the way to her apartment, and it's sitting there. We're going to plug it in today because you're supposed to let it sit. If you ever lay a refrigerator day, you let it sit for 24 hours. But I looked at my girlfriend afterwards and I was like, see, your brain's my brawn. We can do anything we want. Like, there's nothing we can't accomplish. That, and she was like, that's a really good attitude. And I was like, that is a really good attitude. I'm going to talk about that in class. So that is the kind of attitude we want to have. We want to have this belief that we can accomplish what we set out to achieve. It is similar to self-confidence. But it's just a little bit different, right? Your confidence might be like your belief in your ability to maybe accomplish like a small task, right? Like let's say you have like, you might try to shoot like a basketball and you have confidence whether or not it's going to go in. But efficacy is like your belief you can set out to achieve long-term success, right? So like, let's say you don't have very much confidence in making like a free throw, but you might have self-efficacy in your ability to get good at basketball eventually, right? Like that's sort of what we mean when we say self-efficacy, right? You don't necessarily have to be confident that you can accomplish literally anything in the short term, but we do want to make sure that we have a high amount of self-efficacy in the belief that like, if we train for something or if we practice something, that we can get good at it. People who have low self-efficacy, you will often see like are the types of people who it's like, hey, how are the workouts going? Are you improving? Like, does this feel good and effective to you? Like, are you enjoying yourself? And it's like those people who are like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fine. Like, I enjoy it. I guess I'm here. And it's like, they're not very engaged. It's like, what's going on? It's like, I don't know, I'm just, I'm going through the motions. Like, this is good for me, I guess. And it's like, well, are you working towards something? And it's like, no, I'm not really working towards anything because I don't believe that I'm necessarily going to accomplish anything. I've always had a bad history of exercise. I'm not athletic. I'm not fit. So you hear all this like very, very, very negative self-talk. That's an indicator of low self-efficacy, right? So one of the ways to actually improve efficacy is to improve that short-term confidence that we talk about. If we can expose somebody to something They overcome that, they do something else, they overcome that, they do something else, they overcome that. That starts to build that efficacy. It's like, well, you didn't think you were going to get through all 3 sets of that barbell squat with good form, and you did. 20 minutes later, hey, you didn't think that you were going to be able to do those pull-ups, and yet you did, right? Like, we start to show our clients, like, I would argue that you are quite good at this stuff, and you are improving all the time. Look at where you were when you started versus where you are now. That's one of the best ways to kind of show someone self-efficacy. In the realm of like working with youths, like I said, it's usually like in a team setting. It's usually a lot of times like based around like sports. So activities with like something to overcome or accomplish built into your workouts is a really fun way to improve that self-efficacy. We push them to the very edge of their comfort zone, and then they get better at that exercise, and that increases that comfort zone by increasing their efficacy, right? So maybe with like a youth client, and then we already know that we're going to take advantage of our aerobic system when it comes to training things, right? So why don't we focus on things like speed ladders, cone drills, hurdles, things like that, where those things take a lot of coordination. And so it's like, all right, so you're going to step here, you're going to step there, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, step, 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 right? This is what you're going to do all the way down the line. And at first they're like, I don't know if I can do this, right? And then they do it slowly, they do it a little bit faster, they do it a little bit faster until eventually they sort of master that movement. Give them a high five, say, hey, great job. That improves their confidence. And the more that we can do that slowly over time, the more it's going to improve that self-efficacy. And when we improve our self-efficacy, we see ourselves as effective, and we see the effective, right? Efficacy. We see ourselves as efficient and capable, right? And that's what we want to instill in really all of our clients. Like, I know I'm talking about youths here, but like, I'm sure you guys might be listening to this right now and being like, no, it's kind of applies to everybody, like hopefully you're going, there's some things that I can apply this to myself, that's the self-efficacy we're looking for. We're looking for that confidence, yes, but like, even if there's like a moment, like, let's say you're going to go skydiving, you don't necessarily have to be super confident during it. It's okay to be like nervous while you're jumping out of a freaking plane, but like afterwards, take the moment to be like, I did this, I overcame this, conquered my fears. Exciting stuff, now the next part of your self-perception, how people see themselves. So they're either going to see themselves as effective with self-efficacy, or they're going to see themselves as valuable. And that's where our self-esteem comes from. So our self-esteem is the belief that we have value, right? That our opinions matter, and that we are just as important as anybody else, right? That's sort of where self-esteem comes from, right? The idea that, you have like this self-worth. And so sometimes this comes from like, at least in youth, it's a little, I mean, self-esteem is a really complicated topic, but a lot of times with like simpler emotional states like that we see in like youths and stuff, two of the biggest things that are going to sort of like have that feeling of value are our body image and our body competence. So we kind of go back to what we said earlier. A lot of kids get wrapped up, a lot of girls generally tend to get very wrapped up in not feeling fit or looking a certain way. And boys tend to get wrapped up in like their athletic capabilities a lot of times when we are younger, right? So again, we see this in youths. We're being really simple here. We're being very reductive, but if we can improve like body competence, right? The idea that like somebody can accomplish their physical tasks, that is going to make particularly male clients, but really anybody, feel like they're a little bit more valuable, right? That's going to improve self-esteem, because it's like, hey, like you are somebody who, when you set out to do something, you actually accomplish it, right? That gives people like a feeling of value. So again, it kind of goes back to that self-efficacy, right? If we can improve the efficacy our clients experience, right, that will give them much more self-esteem. These two concepts are technically separate, but they're very intertwined, right? Your feelings of self-value improve your ability to feel like you succeed, and your ability to succeed sort of improves your self-value, right? You always feel more valuable when you are the person who sets out to accomplish something, right? So one of my favorite ways to do this is, I like to make sure in times where I'm working with like the most common way that I've sort of worked with teens is in like small group sessions. So like anywhere up to like 4 at this gym that I worked at. We had a couple different sessions a week available for like, just youth clients and stuff. And it was cool, like we had a pretty big age range there. We had some people who were, 16-year-olds, and we had like all the way down to 12. And that's obviously a very big difference there, um, boys and girls. And one of the things that I really loved doing in that was, I would like, show a workout, and I would pull a different person every time to sort of demo and be like, so, Tom here is going to help me like demo these exercises. Amanda here is going to help me, by showing you guys what I mean when I say keep your heels down. So I'll like have that person actually be like sort of my template, my model for how to do like the exercises. And that helps them feel like they have a lot of like body competence, right? Which again improves their feelings of value. If they're like, oh, I'm valuable enough to show other people how to do this, right? Other people can succeed because of me, right? And then obviously that's going to improve again their self-efficacy. And then body image is another one, right? This perception of physical appearance, right? Obviously, we know a lot of like teens will sort of deal with this, especially when we look at like disordered or body dysmorphia percentage in youth populations. Yeah, we see about 2.5% of people in the U.S. are suffering from some type of like body dysmorphia, and that is about double in teenagers. So body dysmorphia is this idea that like, you don't look good enough, right? You don't look the way that you're supposed to. I mean, that's 5% people, that's 1 in 20, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of teens, right? And so again, just taking control and like performing exercise and physical activity, which obviously has positive benefits on body composition and things like that, are going to improve that self-esteem, right? So that is definitely sort of what we're going for. These are the two sort of main things that we're focusing on: our self-esteem and our self-efficacy, feelings of self-worth with our self-esteem, and feelings of accomplishment with our self-efficacy. Is that pretty clear, guys, that we got a good understanding of those definitions?
Yes. So essentially, you want to build them up to believe that they could do anything, right? Even though like realistically nobody could like stop the sun from exploding. You want them to believe they could do that, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's fun. You should use that as an example. I love that. That's great. I want you to feel like you can stop the sun from exploding. So yeah, so the next one that we've got is looking at like I said, like our body competence, right? This body competence stuff, which is similar to self-efficacy, is pretty much specific to the physical realm, right? Like we're pretty much only talking about like how we can perform like certain physical tasks. The idea of like running a mile, hitting a baseball, jumping rope without, getting all tangled up, that competence is something that we're trying to instill at a young age, and it's going to shift. It's going to become, you're going to feel really competent at certain ages and not so competent at others, because again, one of the things that happens, and I would literally explain this to my teenage clients sometimes, is like when you go through a growth spurt, your brain is running on old software, like I haven't actually experienced this in a really long time, but I remember when Google Maps was like brand new. Do you guys remember where like every now and then it would be like, take a right here, and you would go to do that, and like that street would be closed and had been for like, like it had cones up and like was completely blocked off and had been for 6 months or something, right? And now like Google's got this like, sort of stuff running through it now that notices that if nobody ever takes that street, it must kind of be closed down. Or maybe they're working with like the city or I don't know how they do it, but I have noticed that like as time goes on, I've run into less and less of those problems. Or, you know, it used to be, man, this happened all the time. Google, you know, Google Maps would be like, you know, go to this street and then take a U-turn, and you'd go, and then like there'd be a sign, it's like no U-turn, you know, and like crap, you know. But that changes, right? Like that has changed over time as the software has gotten better to match the world, right? That's kind of how our brains are when we like experience like a big, you know, growth spurt, right? All of a sudden our brain is trying to control limbs that are a little bit longer than they used to be with the old software. It's like, yeah, no, you can take a left here, and it's like, not anymore, we can't. You know, like our body competence can kind of go down. You can be really good at things, and then all of a sudden, like, not so much. I remember going on a date with this girl, and we were talking about, she used to play like golf when she was like in high school and stuff, and apparently she was a tremendous golf player. She was going to get a scholarship, you know, that was going to be like the main thing that she she was like sure that she was going to go full ride in like ladies golf. And apparently, like when she hit like the specific like growth spurt, she just like couldn't play anymore. She like all like just like in the toilet compared to like the high level she was playing at before. And I was like, you know, as like a trainer, I was like, oh man. And like she was like, I was like, did you have a coach? And she's like, oh yeah, no. She's like, I had a coach I'd meet with like 5 days a week before that. And it's like, but I just couldn't get my swing back. And I was like, that sounds like your coach should have told you to stick it out. Like she got frustrated and kind of gave up on the entire sport. I was like, you know, and you don't have to necessarily be like the world's greatest golfer or anything, but I was like, that sounds to me like, yeah, like everybody goes through growth spurts and then, you know, has a hard time coming back to things, but it's just because your brain doesn't know how to do it. You just have to go back to basics and go back to fundamentals, and you'll get real, you know, you'll redevelop and get great at that stuff. Oh, you know, like, but that story was like a nightmare for me. I was like, oh no, like, but there it is, right? Like she lost that body competence, and then that dealt a little bit of emotional damage, and so she just backed out, right? So again, that's sort of the exact opposite of what we are encouraging in our clients. So body competence is very much going to be specific to the physical realm of things. You know, a lot of times there's competence in, like I said, running a mile, hitting a baseball, jumping rope. These things change, right? And so what we want to do is we want to build up that body competence again, so we can improve self-efficacy, body image, all of this stuff comes together, right? The perception of the physical appearance, right? We want to not only understand that like we have certain personal factors at play, and like, you know, the way that other people look does not have any indicator on whether or not we are valuable, or you know, helping people come to that understanding that like we are constantly bombarded with advertising and movies and TV shows and things like that are telling us that we need to look a certain way or act a certain way, or, you know, look perform a certain way, drive a certain type of car, dress a certain way, all of that stuff. None of that is actually like true or even valuable in my opinion. You know, but because we are bombarded with it, we sort of slowly start to believe it. So helping our clients sort of come to this understanding, especially teens, that that's not true, can be very helpful. You know, too fat, too skinny, too tall, too short, none of those things are true, right? You know, look at like, was it, hold on, who was the shortest NBA player ever? Was it Muggsy Bogues? Was he? Yeah, Muggsy Bogues was freaking 5'3". And he was in the NBA. He was in Space Jam, you know. And he was a tremendous athlete, you know. Who was it a couple years ago? Is it Nate Robinson? Is that the right?
Yeah, the shortest guy to dunk. Pretty
Yeah.
sure, right?
Right.
Sure.
Eventually got into boxing.
Yeah, and then he got knocked out.
I
That
believe.
was brutal.
I mean, different athlete, you know. It's like
Yeah,
you can't be top of, you know. Those are two so very different things. Like I get it when you look at like Bo Jackson, you know, like you look at somebody like that, or if you look at like Deion Sanders, you know, it's like yeah, you can be good at multiple things because they're somewhat similar, but like
Right.
basketball and boxing, like not the same.
That's true. That, and I heard he wasn't even like dedicated to the craft. He just like, he do a couple Instagram videos and then he left. So
That'll happen too. But yeah, that's this idea that like this body image, we can come to a much better understanding or a much better emotional place with those things when we learn that there is no such thing as too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny. Like that doesn't exist, right? You want to change those things about yourself, like you want to change like what your body composition is. Great, I fully support you in that. But it should come from a place of like, this is something you want to do for yourself, and like, taking care of yourself, not from a place of like, I need to look that way because someone told me I need to look that way, right? That's where we're at with that. So like I said, emotional well-being. So there are physical and psychosocial like changes that are going to impact these things. And so a lot of times our ability to control our emotions may lead to, a lack of that ability can lead to depression or anxiety, certain psychological disorders, right? I will say, I don't know about like full depression. Like loss of control doesn't necessarily lead to depression. Depression is kind of its own. This is where I kind of disagree with the phrasing here. It can make somebody feel anxious or like bad. I don't think that's the same as experiencing like depression, which is like a brain chemical thing. But that loss of control can lead to these really intense negative psychosocial feelings, right? So that's what we're trying to instill in our clients. We're trying to help our clients develop a healthy emotional well-being, and exercise is a great way to do that. Not only does exercise, just on a physiologic standpoint, getting away from all the psychological stuff, just look at the physiology, it releases so many like positive endorphins that make you feel really, 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 really good. And so when you release those endorphins and you just flood your brain with those feelings, it translates to improved performance, right? Again, we go back to that idea when we talked about like the imagery day, right? We talked about how people who would imagine themselves practicing at something would actually get better at specific things, right? Imagining things improves performance. Well, the fake it till you make it approach actually works. Saying that you're confident, saying that like you can achieve the things that you set out to achieve, all of that has actual physical improvements in like our entire pretty much across everything, right? Psychologically, physically, all of that. So I got a little video for you guys. I was actually like trying to find the friggin trying to find the title of it because I couldn't remember how to look this up. Let's see here, TED. There it is.
Carbon steel used to be an industry secret. Now
Ooh.
it's your kitchen secret weapon.
I love carbon steel pans. All right, so here's a little short little 3-minute video that kind of explains what I'm talking about here.
The victory of the underdog over the favored team, the last-minute penalty shot that wins the tournament, the high-energy training montages. Many people love to glorify victory on the playing field, cheer for favorite teams, and play sports. But here's a question. Should we be so obsessed with sports? Is playing sports actually as good for us as we make it out to be, or just a fun and entertaining pastime? What does science have to say? First of all, it's well accepted that exercise is good for our bodies and minds, and that's definitely true. Exercising, especially when we're young, has all sorts of health benefits, like strengthening our bones, clearing out bad cholesterol from our arteries, and decreasing the risk of stroke, high blood pressure, and diabetes. Our brains also release a number of chemicals when we work out, including endorphins. These natural hormones, which control pain and pleasure responses in the central nervous system, can lead to feelings of euphoria, or what's often called a runner's high. Increased endorphins and consistent physical activity in general can sharpen your focus and improve your mood and memory. So does that mean we'd get just as much benefit going to the gym 5 days a week as we would joining a team and competing? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Because it turns out that if you can find a sport and a team you like, studies show that there are all sorts of benefits that go beyond the physical and mental benefits of exercise alone. Some of the most significant are psychological benefits, both in the short and long term. Some of those come from the communal experience of being on a team. For instance, learning to trust and depend on others, to accept help, to give help, and to work together towards a common goal. In addition, commitment to a team and doing something fun can also make it easier to establish a regular habit of exercise. School sport participation has also been shown to reduce the risk of suffering from depression for up to 4 years. Meanwhile, your self-esteem and confidence can get a big boost. There are a few reasons for that. One is found in training. Just by working and working at skills, especially with a good coach, you reinforce a growth mindset within yourself. That's when you say, even if I can't do something today, I can improve myself through practice and achieve it eventually. That mindset is useful in all walks of life. And then there's learning through failure, one of the most transformative long-term benefits of playing sports. The experience of coming to terms with defeat can build the resilience and self-awareness necessary to manage academic, social, and physical hurdles. So even if your team isn't winning all the time, or at all, there is a real benefit to your experience. Now, not everyone will enjoy every sport. Perhaps one team is too competitive, or not competitive enough. It can also take time to find the sport that plays to your strengths. That's completely okay. But if you spend some time looking, you'll be able to find a sport that fits your individual needs. And if you do, there are so many benefits. You'll be a part of a supportive community. You'll be building your confidence. You'll be exercising your body, and you'll be nurturing your mind. Not to mention having fun.
So, love that idea, right? We do love that sort of team aspect for younger individuals. So, all right. So our goal as the coach, right? If we got to step to the other side of this. If we firmly believe in all these benefits that we're sort of laying out here, let's step to the other side and look at this from our aspect. So the big goal for a personal trainer or a coach or whatever you want to call yourself when you're working in this realm is that we need to develop as much rapport with our clients as possible. So we want to understand our client and get to the heart of what's important to them, right? So identify their important values. That could be maybe they have just like a little bit of like societal acceptance. Maybe they're just looking for acceptance from their peers, right? So this is where like team building and things like that become very valuable. Taking the time to just bring a whole team together is a really big part of not only helping you build rapport with them, but also helping like all of them build rapport together. I'm super stoked. This weekend is the St. Pat's Hat tournament here in LA for Frisbee. And so it's basically this weird hat tournament where you kind of lay out what your skills are in general. Your names all go into a hat and you shuffle it around and then pull that out and get put on like a team randomly, which is just, the idea of that is so fun to me. You know, I'm so excited about it. So that is, it's a really good chance to kind of build rapport, meet some new people and maybe make some new friends, hopefully steal a couple people to start coming into the pickup games that I like to go to. Last year, it ended up leading to me getting on like a league team. So that was kind of fun. Really like, you know, good stuff, right? So we're trying to like build rapport within, you know, between like us and our clients. And we're also trying to help, you know, when we can do that by helping on, by not helping, but understanding what is important to them. Maybe it's school performance, maybe it's sports performance. It should always be to have fun. I think that's something we should always encourage. And then one of the other ways to build rapport with our clients is to focus on short-term, intermediate change. So what I mean when I say that is, like, when we think of like kids, right? We think of like youths, like especially true of like younger youths. They don't exactly have the world's longest attention span. I mean, I'm like a full adult, and I don't have the world's longest attention span. Simon was wearing a Mariners hat the other day, and it completely like derailed me. So like, if we can focus on like short-term change rather than like these big long-term goals, that's the kind of thing that can have a really positive benefit, because it's something tangible that our client can focus on in the here and now. We can start to have this sort of snowball effect, right? It's like we focus on this little tiny thing, we reach that goal, we focus on another small tiny thing, we reach that, we focus on another one. So it kind of helps you pick up momentum. Now, long-term goals are also really, really important. Don't get me wrong, like I love long-term goals, because when you accomplish that, it's like this giant wave of like, I can do anything. I've been working on this for a year, that's amazing. But these short-term, like little ones can sort of help you pick up that momentum until eventually it's so, you're just steamrolling, you're snowballing, moving straight forward in the path. So that's one of the things we can do. We also want to, if we're trying to build rapport with our clients, incorporate activities that are actually important to them. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, hey, so we need to, we looked at your overhead squat, we saw this, and I'll like fully focus on like posture and the things that sort of I'm really paying attention to as like the trainer. And my client's like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, my knees looked good. And I'm like, it's not very important to them sometimes. So I try to use the things that are actually like motivating to them. One of my favorite ones, whenever you get a client that's like trying to fit into like a specific dress in like a certain amount of time, that's always a really fun goal, because they're like, maybe they got a wedding to go to, or they're going to go on a beach vacation, they want to look good, right? Great. Like those are actually really fun. Those are really fun goals to kind of work towards, and you can use them as like motivation. You're like, it's like, they're in the middle of like 20 squats and they're on like the 10th one, the legs are starting to burn, and you look at them and it's like, hey, remember, like you've got a dress to fit into and you're going to look so freaking good. Think about how like, think about your legs in that short friggin' dress. And they're like, okay, and then kind of get through that. Love that. I love to like motivate my clients with stuff like that. Or, my favorite one with like my male clients is like when they're like benching or something, or they're like struggling or like doing a really heavy chin up or a pull of a row of some type. And it's like, come on, this is your ticket to the gun show. Let's go. Those little things that are just kind of like fun and important to them. They don't necessarily always have to be the most physiologic. They don't have to necessarily be the most like deep goals in the world. They can be really surface, but it's a good way for you to kind of connect with your client. Another one you want to do is like help them understand like the benefits of whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, right? Helping them understand, it's like, I know this burns, but remember, like this is going to help you improve that explosive power in your legs, right? Or like, if we're doing like 20 squats, like if you guys done high repetition barbell squats, it is terrible. It's probably one of my least favorite things. I love doing leg work, and I'll lunge all day. I'll step up all day. I'll sprint all day, but high rep barbell squats, and I can high rep goblet squat all day. High rep barbell squats though, there's just something about it. It is just terrible. But like if I've got somebody doing something like that, helping them understand the benefits, it's like, I know this burns, but come on, think about the endurance that you're getting right now. Things like that. And it's like they're focused on the future rather than focused on the hurt, right? Is a really helpful tool. And then the last thing that we want to do when it comes to building trust is we sort of got this 5-step process that we're going to kind of go through here. And it sort of feeds off everything that we've been talking about here. So again, the idea of this like process, it's going to help us emphasize our client's commitment to what it is we're working on. It's also going to help emphasize the fact that we are committed to helping them. It also builds trust within the client and with us that we are there to push them in the direction they want to go. So here's how we implement this. We want to understand these 5 sort of key areas, right? First one we want to understand is we wanted to develop a vision with our clients, right? So help our client identify and then clarify what it is that they're specifically trying to accomplish. Ask them, what do they want? But then more importantly, ask them why. So you can get to the true motivations on what it is your client wants to work on. Cannot tell you how many times I've had a client come to me and say like, hey, I'm hoping to lose a couple pounds, right? So I hear that and I'm like, great, I focus on like a fat loss routine. And then as I'm working with that client, it turns out like the reason they want to lose a couple pounds is because like, it has nothing to do with how much they weigh. They don't have like a goal to weigh in mind. It's just that their doctor told them that they need to get healthier, or they got a grandkid on the way and they want to have enough energy to actually play with that grandkid. But you hear those kind of things, you're like, oh, weight loss is not your goal. Health is your goal, right? Or maybe somebody's like, I want to lose a couple pounds. They're trying to run faster, right? I've had this one actually is all the time. Like that's the big one people always say. They always say they're like, I'm here to lose weight. And then you ask them why, and you get way deeper answers afterwards. Multiple times I've had people who are like trying to become like police officers, for instance. They're trying to like do that 1.5 mile run that they have to get through. And they're like, here to lose a couple pounds. And they think that like losing the weight is what's going to help them like in this run. And I was like, oh, so what's actually important to you is like this performance that you're trying to like accomplish, right? So then like we start, as we focus on like losing the weight, I'll still build that routine, but we do the things that are related to actually accomplishing this like big long-term goal that they might have. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on events or goals that are somewhat close in proximity. We focus on like a short-term situation, right? So one of the ways you can do this, ask your client, how do you want your life to be in a few months? It's always a really fun one. It's like I want a clear vision of what it is you're trying to accomplish and why. Where do you want to be in 6 months? Like, what do you want your future self to be going through? Do you want to be going through, a very positive thing, or do you want to be, do you want to be riding the struggle bus? Like, where do you want to be? So when we work with youths, we really want to, like 6 months even that's an example of a very long-term goal for a youth. Chances are with youth clients, we're going to focus on immediate interests, short-term, very achievable short-term goals, right? Let's say you got a youth client and you're trying to just drop, let's say 20 seconds off their mile time, right? Within the next, and we set it up for, a couple weeks away. If we can just take that 20 seconds off, we can do that 3 times, and then explain to our clients, like, look, if we can do this 3 times over the next couple months, that is going to be a minute off of your mile time. That's great, right? That's the vision that we're sort of trying to encourage in our client, right? If we do that, that's going to help us build even more rapport with our clients. Oh my Lord, my roommate is on his way to work and he is wearing a full leprechaun's outfit. All right, I guess that's happening. By the way, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Everybody, go eat some potatoes for dinner tonight. And some corned beef. Next thing we want to do is we want to have like a strategy in play, right? A strategy is how we're going to accomplish this vision, right? So this sounds like pretty much everything we need to do, right? We set up a vision and then we have like a strategy to accomplish that vision, and then we're done. But there's a couple more things that we're going to see here. But the strategy is our plan of action, right? We talked about when we looked at like behavior change the other day, right? We were looking at like how to develop an action plan for us to meet our goals. So set specific goals that actually promote action. Again, when we look at the idea of like a SMART goal, one of the reasons SMART goals are so good, yes, they're specific, yes, they're measurable, but they are also actionable. We know what actions we can take in order to accomplish our goal, right? Or they're achievable. You can think of it that way, right? We know what actions we can take to achieve our goal. So we have a strategy built into just the goal itself. That's going to make it way easier to come up with a strategy to meet that goal, right? So set goals that are specific, challenging, time-bound, and then focus on like primarily like short-term goals, and that they promote actions. This is where, again, we see SMART goals become like such a valuable tool, right? You can see here, that's sort of what we're talking about, right? Work towards a goal that is challenging but possible. Make sure that it is the type of thing that you can actually work towards, and you know how you are going to measure that progress, right? Challenging but not impossible. Next thing we need to do is we need to increase our clients' belief that they're going to get there. So once we have like these first two things in place, this is where like the coaching process really starts to come in. This is where you are working with your client consistently. So we want to enhance our clients' confidence and belief that they're going to accomplish their task. So one of the ways, again, to do that is to focus on like short-term things that increase their efficacy, right? So let's say a client wants to make the basketball team, right? And so we start to teach them small skills that are going to translate to that, right? We start to build up their cardio, their endurance. We start to work on their speed, their agility, and their reactive capabilities, their quickness, right? So we start to run like very specific drills that are complicated at first. And then they get slowly like better and better and better at it, right? Learning how to do a crossover, come back and shoot. Crossover, come back and shoot. Yesterday, so one skill that I just have really never mastered in Ultimate is like the really like the long like 70, 80-yard throw. I don't really have like an 80-yard throw like a lot of the guys I play with. And that's like where you're supposed to be able to serve. You know, it's like a 100-yard field. You basically want to be able to send it the entire field so that your team can get as much distance as possible. You want it to travel very high so that it floats, and that gives your team time to get up and play defense. Never really been able to do that. And this one guy that I play with is a guru at it. And so I was getting some tips from him yesterday. And so the short-term thing that I'm going to work towards for the next like month or so in my game is I'm going to try and send it as often as possible. And it was just like a small retool yesterday, and I started to get it. Started to retool my grip. I do like this kind of grip, and then they call this the power grip, or your thumb actually goes on top like that. Looks like a freaking claw. It's very awkward feeling, but eventually, like, hopefully I'll get used to it, right? I have this like belief that it's going to happen. And so focusing on like the small things, like 75% effort every time is going to get better and better and better at it over time. And I believe in the process. I know that like anytime I've ever broken something down and slowly worked at it, it gets better and better and better. So we want to enhance our clients' confidence in their ability to accomplish that task. Doing small little things along the way is going to help with that, right? We can enhance their belief by visualizing. That's a really effective tool. We just talked about using imagery a couple days ago, right? That can be really effective to see themselves actually accomplishing it. And then practicing like those little short-term skills every single day, getting consistent with it can be a really effective way to enhance that belief. Remember, Michael Phelps' coach, the guy who took him to the Olympics, right? He was his high school coach. Actually, even better than that, LeBron, right? LeBron was on this team. I can't remember who the dad was. It was another guy he ended up like playing with. But LeBron's like high school basketball team was like legendarily good. And their coach was this kid that was like on the five main players there. It was like one of their dads. He knew nothing about coaching basketball, and he read every book he could get his hands on. And one of the things that was like really effective that he did was like he fostered a belief in success. They were all told to visualize consistently and use this imagery that would sort of enhance and like see themselves succeeding and like get better and better and better at controlling that. So again, helping our clients like get into this mindset that they're going to meet their goals and they're going to achieve things and believe it is a big part of you know, getting our clients to believe in us as their coach, right? It's only going to strengthen your relationship with your client. Persistence is a big one. Obviously, there's going to be setbacks. There's definitely going to be plateaus. There are going to be things to overcome. So we want to have a persistent, ongoing belief and a persistent, ongoing effort to accomplish our task, right? what's going to happen at some point is there's going to be some type of like setback. So again, one of the things that I like to do, and this applies to all clients in my opinion, encourage daily exercise. If we can just encourage our clients to like get into the routine of things and take pride in the fact that they are doing those things consistently, is going to be very, very, very helpful, right? Like I'll have my clients show up and they'll be exhausted. They'll be like, I think everybody like, we were all a little tired this morning. Like it was just so funny. I was like, Chris, we were just talking to you and I was like, how you feeling? You're like, I'm tired. Like I ran into my roommate downstairs. He was like, I'm tired. It was so weird. Like everyone I've talked to today just didn't get enough sleep. So I had a client who shows up to the gym and they're like, I'm wiped out. I'm just here. Let's do this. I always take a moment to be like, hey, good on you for showing up. I wish you'd gotten a full night's sleep because I'd love to get a really effective training session today. But like props to you for fighting the warmth of your bed, rolling out and getting to the gym. Like I appreciate the effort you're giving me right now. Even if you're not able to like work at your most efficient, you may not be breaking any records today, but like props to you for maintaining the habit and getting out the door. That took an incredible amount of willpower. I was talking about a comedian earlier, but I love, there's this joke by John Mulaney that I love, where in the very beginning of his show, he's just thanking the audience. He's like, thanks for coming out to a thing. He's like, you guys are here and I appreciate that because it's really easy not to do things. Like it's like the fact that you would doing things is so much harder than doing nothing. The fact that you would do anything at all is remarkable. It's like he's like, as an adult, canceling plans is like heroin in terms of instant relief. It's like, you ever talk to a kid and they're like, we didn't do anything all day. Talk to and they're so bummed out. You talk to an adult and they're like, what did we do this weekend? We did nothing, and their faces light up. So like just developing that persistence to overcome some type of like obstacle and encourage that like attitude of like, hey, great job just showing up today. I will take it. That persistence is that's a big thing that we want to foster in our clients, right? And then we obviously want to like help reward success, right? Forgive setbacks. There are going to be setbacks. Take the time to say like, hey, great job succeeding today. And then if they fall back into old habits, let's say they do like a non-target behavior, forgive that setback. It's not that it's okay and they can just do it again, right? But take time to be like, hey, this happened. We're still on the path. We're going to get there, right? We are oftentimes, guys, the main support system that our client has when it comes to achieving physical goals. So like when they experience like a plateau, you just take the time to just be like, yeah, this is rough. Everybody hits a plateau. I promise we're going to get there in the end. Take the time to help our clients sort of understand that can be a really big part of, again, getting them to trust you, and you're building that rapport. And lastly, there's sort of the learning approach. We want to encourage our clients to self-monitor. Teach them how to self-monitor, journaling, or even just taking the time to like make a mental note. Just take a second to like this is very true, by the way. When I used to make people do burpees all the time, I always make them like clap, and I'm like, come on, high five, self five, I'm awesome. That used to be what I used to always like tell people to say. And this is 100% true in my own life. Every now and then when I do something really well, I hear a little voice in my brain that goes, self five, I'm awesome. That's your confidence. That's the learning we want to take. And it's a way of recording progress. I can think of a couple times specifically when I've said that to myself, because I just took a moment to like accomplish it, record it in my brain, and put it in the box of times that I've succeeded. That little moment of just like checking that little box, and like, you're trying to give yourself it's like you're a kindergartner in your own brain. You get like, I put a gold star up on the wall in my own brain, right? Taking a moment to do that encourage that in your clients. That type of attitude is another way to improve self-efficacy, self-confidence, body confidence, all of those things, right? So record your progress, but don't forget to also record your setbacks. There will be times where we execute a non-target behavior. So record all of them, right? Keep a journal. If you don't want to keep a journal, take a mental note, right? But recording it specifically in like a journal is one of the best ways to kind of see things, right? I definitely, there's going to be a hard conversation that I've got to have with a couple students who are just, they've been missing some class lately. And so like, I got to sit down and be like, look, I've got your attendance right here. Whenever I have that conversation, normally my attendance is on its own sheet every single day. But I just take a minute to tally them all up and I show them what a month looks like, red and green. And when you see that distinct difference, it makes you go, oh man, like I definitely have like more to work on than I thought I did. So that allows you to make course corrections. And when you can make those course corrections, it's going to be the most effective way to accomplish our goals, right? So use the information that you've got to make those course corrections. If you can do that with your client, if you can keep your vision, come up with a strategy to achieve that vision, foster an atmosphere of belief and persistence, and then focus on like learning this yourself, encourage your clients to learn this themselves and record these things and journal. It's going to help your, you're going to create very high level athletes, very high level, high functioning youth that will translate into healthier, happier adults. So those are sort of our 5 key aspects there. And I think that this, I don't think this just applies to kids. I think this also applies very well to adults. So as a reminder, the mind and the body are linked. The mind affects the body affects the mind. Change in one is going to affect the other, right? 4 key areas that we're looking at there: the psychological aspects of how we are thinking about things, the physical aspects of how we are feeling about things, the social aspects of who we are surrounding ourselves with, or do we feel socially accepted, and then the emotional part of it, how we sort of feel about things on a subjective level, is also really important, right? All of those things lead to a higher quality of life if we can get to a place where we're functioning well in all of them. One of the best ways to do that is to improve our clients' self-perception. That's going to be their efficacy and their esteem. We want our clients to be confident that they can accomplish whatever it is they set out to accomplish. They are successful individuals. And we also want to encourage them to have a higher level of self-esteem, and feelings of self-worth. They are valuable. Their opinions matter. Yes, they can accomplish what they set out to achieve, but also they are valuable outside of what they can achieve, right? Do you guys watch Encanto? Man, that song about pressure, I love that song. That is all about like somebody who had very high levels of like confidence and efficacy, but had very low levels of self-esteem. And so she was just learning how to, not wrap her self-worth up in her ability to do stuff for other people. That's what the whole song's about. It's amazing. It's great. It's like, that's a really good lesson. Your value is not tied to what you can give others all the time. Your value sometimes is just, your ability to, you have value just in and of yourself. Building good rapport with our clients is how we are going to actually have a hold on them so that we can actually affect them. If our clients don't trust us or care, right, then they don't have any reason to listen. We want to have a good rapport with our clients. So one of the best ways to do that is to understand what values are important to them. And we've got that 5-step process to understand that. If we get a clear understanding of our client's vision, and then we develop a clear strategy to meet that vision, we develop belief and persistence to overcome obstacles and the belief that we are going to succeed. And then we focus on helping them learn so they can achieve something even larger, and they can reset this process and go through the whole thing and have a larger vision later, right? Let's teach a kid how to save $100, how to save $1,000, $10,000, $100,000. Become a millionaire. Like it starts small. You just reset all the time, right? Like if you asked me, is it possible, like, if you go back like 5 years ago and we're like, hey, do you think you could set aside $10,000 in savings? I would have told you that was impossible, but again, like we accomplished that, and then we set on to the next goal. So that is where we are at today, guys. A little bit of a shorter one, but hopefully you found it very valuable and insightful. You guys know the drill. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Cyrus, Chris, Julio, David, how y'all feeling?
Feeling good about the class. Feeling good.
Love that. Well, guys, it's day 2. New homework rolls around. It's up on Canvas now, so it's going to cover chapters 1 through 3. Grab that youth manual, work your way through the first 3 chapters, check the PowerPoints, look at your notes, and it will sort of lead you through.